Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Jeff from Jeff Simon Photo, and I wanted to actually come up here because of the fact that over the webinar we had some audio issues, but I want to make sure that you guys get a full-on start to finish of me actually editing a picture and how my process goes. Like I said, the first step in completing or delivering finished work is always giving out edited photos. Never give out unedited. And me, I enjoy the shooting portion way more than I enjoy the edits. So I try to get the shooting portion as right as possible. So I try to get everything in camera right. So I only have to do a little bit of edits just to make my picture pop or give me the image or final image that I'm looking for that I can deliver to a customer. So what I want to do is just take you guys through my journey and tell you exactly everything that I do. Now I do this on every single image, but I want to take you through that info and just kind of go through the info as I'm doing it, so you can kind of get a sense of why. I know it's a lot of you guys out there that edit way better than me, or just edit better than me in general. And I know it's a lot of you guys that spend a lot of time inside of Lightroom and Photoshop to get an image to look, magnificent. Unfortunately, I'm not that one. Um, yeah, so I'm just gonna go through my process and let you guys see what I do. So I'm gonna pull up Lightroom. So my process is maybe 40% Lightroom and 60% Photoshop. So um, series of images that I've been working on, and I want to just choose one from here because, again, it was work. We were actually at another photographer's home, and we got some pretty good images here. And again, just working with natural window light, and like I really like that image, that pose. But I wouldn't edit this one because when I pull up on it, it's the eyes are soft. And so either I misfocused there or something happened, but that would have probably been one that I would have edited up. I kind of like these ones with her with the camera, vintage camera here, and just her looking at us, with the camera and things of that nature. So kind of like that one. I like this one more than the one where she's looking away. Um, or even the head. So I like the head straight on. Um, I like this one. I like this one a little more because of the fact that I'm not cutting off shoulders. And this one here, it seems like I got the shoulder kind of cut off a little bit. This is a little bit more intimate. And as you can see, the eyes are perfectly in focus, so that's good. Let me check focus here. Um, yeah, eyes are way in focus here. So I think I'm gonna kind of go with this one. I want to still just play around a little bit, just go back. It's a few more with her sitting down with the camera and actually got the camera to her face and stuff like that, or even smiling. Oh, that one there, caught her blinking. There it is. Um, let's see. So just kind of, again, kind of just going through, what I would actually edit out of this series. And again, guys, this is, I'll deliver these to her, of course, but this is all in good fun. A friend invited me over. We went over and we just shot, and it was just an awesome experience. So just again, kind of going through what I would actually use in one of these situations, what I like, what I don't like. Kind of like these ones as well. Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of feeling these ones. Eyes are in focus. This one with the hair down. So the chin is up in this one. So we're a little bit more up the nostrils than I would like. Um, so if I did do one, it may be, one of these ones where the chin is actually down a bit. So I think I'm actually going to go with this one. What are you guys thinking? We got a nice black background. So as you can see, we're gonna have to do some retouching there, but I think I'm gonna go with this one. So just so I can see the full image, I just hide that down there. And so this is what I'm looking at in photo and Lightroom, right? So I know I want to start with this image. Well, I have a preset called Start. What that preset does for me is what I'm going to show you guys right now. So one of the first things that it does for me is it actually does lens correction. So it gets rid of the um, chromatic aberration. I always have an issue with this word. Chromatic aberration. It gets rid of that, and that's like that greenish magenta tint that's around the blacks and whites. What it also does is it just enables the profile corrections on the actual lens. So if you have a wide lens and it has any bowing or is buckling or bending in places it's not supposed to, it would actually fix that. It identifies the lens. As you can see, I was using the 35 millimeter f2 at that point. And it just kind of gets rid of the distortion. So that's one of the main things that I always do. One of the other things that I always do is I also do um, transformation auto here, which is actually just going to align my picture. So it just makes sure I'm not delivering crooked photos. You know, my eyes are not always perfect. So I want to make sure that I'm delivering something that's not crooked. Um, and last but not least, it does a few things here for me. I always turn my clarity up just a bit, maybe to about 7. I always turn my vibrance up a bit. I like vibrant pictures, maybe to about 20 or so. And I keep everything else the same. So start for me is just an action that does all those three things that I just talked about. So if I click start now, you'll see the image moves because it's aligning itself again, just like I just did. So that's pretty much what that does for me. It aligns my image. It takes my clarity to 7, takes my vibrance over to around 21. All of this other information it keeps the same. I keep all of that the same. Again, it does auto here on upright, and it does auto to make sure I'm giving a correct image. And then if you go here in lens correction, these two are checked. That's all it does. So now we're ready to kind of get into the grit, I would say, of the actual image. And we want to actually start editing a little bit. And me personally, when I start to edit, what I want to do is I want to be in complete control of the light. So if I think it's a little too bright, what I'll do is I'll turn my highlights down, or if I think I'm not getting enough separation between this head and this background, I'll turn my highlights down and I'll bring the shadows up a bit. Now you can actually start to see a little bit more of the definition of her actual hair versus just the background itself. Now it does bring the background out, but in doing so, as you can see, it kind of brings out her a lot more. So I like that. I'm going to stick with that and kind of go with that. Now, I don't want my brights to turn gray or my blacks to turn gray, so I will turn some of the blacks down. But as you can see, if you do go too far, that blue line that goes over means that you're losing data. That means it's all the way black and there's no data there, and that's not what you want. So go down just a little bit and maybe turn my whites up just a bit here. And again, I'm eyeballing a lot of this information, but I do also want to turn up my contrast. Again, I think the contrast does allow the image to pop and make it more of a three-dimensional image. That's what I'm going for. I never really go for a flat image. I go for a three-dimensional image when I'm lighting, when I'm rendering, when I'm editing. I just go for a three-dimensional image. I'm just going to kick her up one just a little bit. Okay, so there. All right, so as of now, I am cool with how those lights are, how she's illuminated, how she's separated, but you can also tell that there is a background. I'm happy with that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and do a little bit of cosmetic work. I'm going to just come in here on the eyes. And what I suggest, guys, is I use a small graphics Wacom tablet, Wacom, however you want to say it. I call it Wacom. But I suggest grabbing or picking one up. They're very inexpensive. I use it Intuitus Wacom tablet. They still got the bamboos that they make, Wacom tablets, but it just allows you a little bit more accuracy when you're drawing or painting or shading in this nature. What I've done is, and just to let you know, this so we can kind of go back and see what I just did. What I did was I zoomed in on the eyes, right, and I got it 1-to-1. So pretty much this is a 1-to-1 image. I zoomed in on the eyes, and what I did was I went right over here to um, adjustment brush. So on my adjustment brush, I clicked on that for a new adjustment brush. Now I'm using the lighting portion, so dodge lighting, and I just keep all the stuff kind of the same. As you can see, it bumps up the exposure just a bit, but everything else it leaves the same. My brush, real easy. I'm using a 0.3 brush, but you can control that with the parentheses or the brackets that's on side of your computer, right by the P. So the brackets that's on the P, the one closer to the P makes it a little bit smaller. The one further away from the P makes it a little bit bigger. So that's kind of how that works. All right. So with that being said, I want to plug in my tablet here. Apologize, didn't have it plugged in. We plug it in here. All right, and now my pen, that's me using my pen instead of my mouse. So again, it just makes it a little easier. What I want to also do is I want to hit the letter O. The letter O actually shows select mask overlay. So what it does is anything that I paint, as you see, is checked. What it does, anything that I paint, it will actually turn red. So as you can see. So now you can kind of see what you're painting, before actually laying it down and whether or not you need to erase or anything of that nature if you go into the pupil or any of that. So that's what that does. And so I'm just kind of painting using that Dodge lighting brush and just kind of painting over the eyes. Why am I doing that? Because me personally, I do still believe that cliche that the eyes are the gateway to the soul. And if you can actually get into the eyes, or if I can make these eyes stand out any more than they already are, then I want to do that. So I just want to enhance them just a bit, and I want to whiten them a bit so that they're all the way white. So the way that you make sure something is all the way white is you remove any type of saturation, which is color, guys. You remove any type of saturation from it. Now, with eyes, I don't go all the way down, but I go fairly down enough. And because I want to get them a little bit brighter, so they kind of hone you in, I'm gonna up the exposure just a little bit. It was already up just a bit, but I'm gonna up them just a little bit more. Not too much, but maybe about there is good for me. Okay, so I'll click done here. Now what I want to do is I want to take care of a few cosmetic things. Um, any of the blemishes that I see here, I want to take care of. So I don't go in and I don't be too meticulous with it, but if I can see it, I'm going to try to remove it. So I'll go in here and just start clicking and removing. And all this is doing is using another piece of the skin to match up and kind of remove blemishes. That's all. So the little ones I'm not too worried about because we're gonna use a method here in Photoshop that's gonna kind of get rid of those. See that big one there, this one here, again, this one here, and again I'm using the brackets right beside the P to make my brush bigger and smaller. So if you ever gotta do that, make sure it's easy for me to do instead of actually going in here, down here, and working with the sides of my brush on this side and then coming back to the image. It's just easier for me to hold my hand right over this brackets button and kind of go from there. So again, blemishes, just removing them. Anything I can, with the naked eye, just see that looks like a blemish, then I'm just going to remove it. And again, I don't I'm not trying to remove everything. That's the other thing about it. I'm not trying to remove everything because I'm not trying to stay in here too long. Some people can spend days in here removing and perfecting skin. I don't think skin is supposed to be perfected. It's an organ. It's our biggest organ that we have in our body, and it's 100% perfect. No, it doesn't. It doesn't need to be. That doesn't make us who we are. So again, that's just my thoughts, and it's the excuse that I use not to edit so much. So, you know, take it for what you take it for. So again, almost finished. I think this one here. I think everything else I am okay with. I just want to give a little look. Yeah, see those small imperfections there? I'm okay with that. So once I'm done, I hit done, come back, take a look at it, and you still see some blemishes there, some blemishes there. But it's a huge difference from what it was. I'm going to get that one there. I'm going to see this one on the side. I'm going to get that one. Anything to just make the skin look uneven. Also grab this one here and that one. All right. So now, looking again, and again, I got it zoomed in 1-to-1, guys, just so I can just take a look, 1-to-1. And that's it for real. I think that is pretty good. Like, hey, I don't go in really and remove like scars, but you can. Again, it's totally up to you, and it'll be done the exact same way. But instead of clicking, you actually can just roll your mouse down, and it'll automatically copy or select another piece of the scan to render from, and that scar is now gone. So. Um, I think that's it. For me, that's good. So, what I'm going to do is this is the bulk of what I do inside of Lightroom. So, now what I do is I come in and I export. And with my export, depending on how I'm doing it, if it's a lookbook or if it's proof, but for me, this is going to be my basic. So, I'm going to actually call it basic new, and I'm going to call it, let's say, edit one. It already goes to my desktop. It goes into a folder called Untitled Exports. Yeah, that's just me how I sort it. Keep the size at 100, resolution at 300. And I don't watermark this here because that's not what I want to do. So I'm going to go ahead and export it out. While I export this out, guys, as I mentioned, this is the bulk of everything that I do inside of Lightroom. From there, I'm able to close Lightroom, and now I'm going to bring up Photoshop. And I'm a minimalist guy, so whatever small stuff I can have on this side is what I'm gonna have. And I'm using an old version of Photoshop too, so you guys may have a different version. I'm using like the 2017 version, I think, or 18 version. So you guys may have a little bit more bells and whistles than I do, and that's great if you do. If you don't, don't worry. Any version of Photoshop should be able to do exactly what I'm doing here, so don't even worry about that. All right, so now we're in Photoshop. Once we're in Photoshop, we want to go over, want to do open, and it's going to automatically pull up my desktop, my untitled exports, and we name this one export. So let's go to the ease, and there it is right there, right? So we're going to click it, open it up. Give it a second. I'm actually recording too, so using a lot of computing power here to get all this stuff done, but it is what it is. All right, so there's my picture. One of the main things about my pictures and images is that I want them to be as sharp as possible. So what I do is I actually, to make it a little bit sharper just to start off, I copy, and just by simply dragging the background and dragging it over here to this new layer, it creates a copy. I automatically come over here into filter, other, and then I hit a high pass. So I do a high pass on it, nothing very big, something like 1.8, just to bring out the detail just a little bit more. And that's all a high pass does. A high pass brings out the detail inside of your image. Once I do that, I change the layer from regular or normal to overlay. So therefore it overlays on top of what I have, so it doesn't have that gray, pretty much gray filter on the top. And once I do that, now I got two layers. I'm a minimalist, so I don't like to keep a lot of layers. I know there's people that do, but I don't like to keep a lot of layers. So what I do is I merge my visible layers, bring it back down to just one layer. Okay, so from here, what I want to do is this, is first and foremost, I want to go ahead and show you guys how much I use frequency separation. And if you're not familiar with frequency separation actually separates the color and the texture so that way you can actually edit and smooth out skin without affecting the color of the actual skin. So it's kind of like editing on top and smoothing out the sides that you want to smooth out. To do that, we have to actually separate the color and the texture. So to do that, I'm gonna do what I did before on the high pass layer. I'm gonna take this layer here and copy it, and then I'm also take the copy and copy it. So now I got three layers. I'm gonna name them. I'm gonna name this one text for texture. I'm gonna name this one color for color. I'm gonna group these together, and again, I just selected both of them, right mouse click, hit group, and I'm gonna name it frequency separation. You can type all of that if you want to. I'm gonna just do FS, hit OK, and keep it moving. All right, so now I got a group, and inside of that group, I got two layers, which is the text layer and the color layer. First things first is we want to separate the color from the texture, and the color we want to smooth out, kind of blend it together. So I'm gonna select my color layer, go to filter, blur, Gaussian blur. Now it's going to give you an image, and that's exactly what you want. You want, this is how it looks, but we want to smooth all those colors out and see how those colors kind of mirror, mesh together. As they do that, that's exactly what you want. So this radius of 6.6 works. That radius is not always going to work like that. So make sure you get that smooth gradient that you're looking for when it comes to your colors. I'm gonna hit OK on that. That's my color layer. Now what I have to do is I have to separate the texture, meaning her actual texture of her skin, from that color layer. And to do that, I'm gonna select texture, go over here to apply image because I want to apply, in this case, I want to subtract a layer. And the layer that I want to subtract is my color. So what it's saying is saying keep everything besides the color of this actual layer. And I'm gonna hit OK. Now, once I do that, I need to change it from this gray matte here, which I'm going to use, and I'm going to use linear light. Linear light lets in the light at a linear level, so it brings back the entire image. So now we're using the image, but the difference is all of my colors are smoothed out, which you can't see because it's laying over top of the actual layer. So to do that, I'm going to go over here and actually select my healing brush. Now the healing brush kind of works just like a band-aid. What it does is it allows you to go in and sample from one area and transfer it over to another. And I'm going to show you how we're going to use that in this particular case. So I'm going to go over here, select my healing brush. Using those brackets again, I'm going to select the area of the skin that's very smooth, like right here. Boom. Very smooth right there. I'll make my brush a little bit smaller because I can start to see where it can blemish up just a little bit there. And I'm using my graphics tablet for this. To select the layer or select the area, you actually hold down Alt and then click on the area that you want. So, and as you do that, as you can see, it kind of already starts taking some things away. Now you double click on it to reset it. But as you can see, as I paint, you get a cross here and you get where I'm actually painting. It's taking things from here and applying it to where I'm actually painting. And all it's doing is smoothing out that skin using that color, that smoothness of that color to actually smooth out that skin. That's all it's doing. So I'm going to do majority of the face this way. And you'll see how that looks. But to me, this doesn't look as natural. And I'm going to show you what I do to get things to look a little bit more natural for me. And as you can see, depending on where you make sure you watch out where you are, because it'll start to pull over from like the hair, and if you don't reset that brush. And again, if you're using a graphics tablet, you can reset by just double clicking. If you're not, you can just double click on your mouse and it'll automatically reset to where you were in the middle. I don't do lips and I don't do eyes. Reason being is because lips and eyes have natural cracks inside of them already, and I don't want to mess with that. I'm not the type that'll go in here and, re-crack your lips. Nothing like that. Um, so, as you can see, it's kind of smoothing out those blemishes. They're still there, but they just blend in a little bit more. It's kind of blurring it out a little bit. And I'm going to show you guys the difference here in just a few. All right, almost finished. I want to just do this side of the face. And as you can see, I'm kind of staying away from the nose as well. Any area that, has its own set of details, I really don't want to mess with. So I stay away from those areas whenever possible. And sometimes you got to go in there, but in this picture here, her skin is great. So you don't really got to go in and do any of that. So it's awesome. All right, so almost finished. And when editing, guys, me personally, I really only do the face unless the client specifically asks for something else. Hey, can you smooth out my arms or something like that? I get that rare, but you do get it. But again, it's just depend on, what you feel comfortable with. I'm not a Photoshop or um, Lightroom master like some people are, and some people do awesome work, man, when it comes to retouching. So, shout out to those guys, man, because some people just retouch and just be, oh my goodness. But again, that's not what I like to do. I like to shoot. That's my portion. I don't like to spend this time in front of the computer. I want to spend as least time in front of the computer and more time actually out shooting whenever possible. So that's me. That's what I like to do. And so to each his own on everything else. I don't do hair as well. I stop right there at the hairline when I'm, smoothing out. Stop right there at the hairline, but I want to give everything kind of an even look. Bingo. Okay, so you can kind of see what we did there. So just to take it out a bit, this is it off, more detailed, put it on, less detail. So I'm okay with that, but I want it somewhere in the middle. So what I do is I take it off of this texture layer and I go to my top layer, which is the layer that really sits where the group is. So this is the layer that controls the group and everything. And I go to my occupancy and I actually turn that down to about 60%. So for me, 60% gives me kind of that still skin bumps, but it doesn't give me all of the skin bumps. You see what I'm saying? It kind of takes some of that away, blurs some of it out, makes the skin look a little bit smoother, besides around the eyes and lips that has those natural, bumps that you want to keep. Now, the next thing I do is I do go in and I actually create another layer under my frequency separation layer. I do my dodge and burn. You guys can type out dodge and burn if you want. I put DB, keep it moving. I turn off my frequency separation layer here. And the reason why I do that, if you guys can actually notice, and I'm going to zoom out a little bit, if you actually notice, the frequency separation takes away some of the detail. And I want to see the detail. I want to see where that light is here. Oops, sorry. I want to see where that light and stuff is on like her forehead and the light that's right there. And I want to see all of that because when I dodge and burn, I'm going to dodge or either burn that portion. I'm not adding any highlights with dodge and burn, and that's what dodge and burn is. Dodge and burn enhances the highlights and it also enhances the shadows. I keep my dodge and burn exposure very low to about 3, and I always stay on the mid tones here. And I use a graphics tablet, but I don't use my tablet to where it's like pressure sensitive, so I keep that off. Okay, so here we go. What I do now is with the dodge, I just come in and dodge where the natural highlights are. Is a highlight that was literally in the middle of her forehead. I don't know if you saw that one, but it's one right here, right? It's one right here under the eyes. You can kind of see it. Kind of see it right here on her cheek. And don't worry about going too much. Don't worry about doing it a little too much. Don't worry about these big white specks in the middle of her face. We're going to all smooth that out. You see these highlights here and the wrinkles of her lips? I dodge all of that. Bring that out a little bit more. Her indenting inside of her chin here. Dodge that. So for me, I think that's really all of the highlights that she actually has. And, going over them, making sure. So now what I want to do is I want to go ahead and burn. And I take the natural shadows that she has. So I always do the brows because the brows have shadows inside of them. And his brows are nice to be a little bit darker. But any natural shadow, so as you can see, is a natural shadow right there. I dodge that. Cheekbone shadow, right? Cheekbone shadow here, right? It's a natural shadow that falls right under the brow here. And again, all it's going to do is it's going to make your image become a shadow right here under the lips, a three-dimensional image. You're just enhancing the portions to make the image pops out. That's really all you're doing. So inside of her lips, there are cracks there, so there want to be, and even though they're lips, there's still cracks there, so you want to make sure you enhance those. And again, from there, that's it. I'm done, right? With the dodge and burn. But again, I always go back because I've done it way too much. So I always go back here. And instead of 60%, I do maybe 50%. I want 50% of what I've done to show. So I'm going to show you how subtle this is, but how effective it is as well. So now we take her face. This is before we did anything. So the very first thing that we did is we went in and we added the frequency separation. Then we added the dodge and burn. And now this is what we're actually left with. It's not anything that's too dramatic. It's not anything that's too over the top. It doesn't look like plastic. Some people frequency separation, it just looks like plastic because they leave everything at 100. Dial it down. And if you even think that's a little too high, take it from the 60, take it down to around 55, but something where you can get that natural look. From there, minimalist, I'm going to go here, merge. Those come back down to just one layer. And now all I do now is enhance a few other features. So I make a new layer on top of my background layer. And that layer here is actually going to be only for my eyes, right? And again, eyes are the windows of the soul, guys. So I want to enhance these as much as possible without causing too much turmoil, right? All right, so I pick my brush, and again, I just picked the brush, a smooth brush here. It was 300, using my brackets to take it down from 300. And I'm just going to paint in the eyes, paint that white. And I'm on white, as you can see right here. Paint white right here under the eyes. So all I'm going to do. I don't go into the pupil. I want to stick right here in the brown portion of the eye. And just paint that white. Now, that looks silly. But if you go over here and add an overlay, it's going to actually overlay that white. And then I take the exposure down or occupancy down just a bit, maybe to about 40. And just that small detail actually gives her a little bit more life inside of her eyes. Instead of it being just the same color all the way around, now she has a little bit of light at the bottom of it, which only enhances her eyes. Again, just a bit. All right. One of the other things that I also do too is this one. I like the contrast of the background to her. I like how she looks on the background. But let's just say, for instance, if you wanted to, or if she blended into that background. If she blended into the background, what I normally would do at that point is I would normally come over here and actually do a smart selection. So with that smart selection, I would actually select her, right? So go in with a smart selection and I will select her. And sometimes it does that, so don't worry about it. We'll go in and fix it here later. But select all of her and even this chair that's behind her that she's actually sitting in. So we'll select that. Make sure you get all of her hair. Go here, get the top. Right? And you can even use the refine edge here to get some of that. So now I'll go in here and subtract the portion that I don't want. Right? And that should do the job pretty good if you selected it, you know, the way I did. So again, this is only if you need an additional separation, if you need to separate her from the actual background. Okay, so keep that in mind. Now I zoom in and I see, okay, is there any areas that I didn't get of her, anything that I'm missing? You know, so a nice little fall off there on the shoulder, but as you can see, that little bump right there. And take your time for this portion and get it as neat as possible. Good, 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 good. A little bit here that I would feel more comfortable with it being out just a little bit more. Okay, good, good. Looking at the hair, making sure that you got what you want, and indent in where you need to indent in. And, okay, so for me, that's good. So what am I gonna do with this? So I'm gonna take this selection and I'm gonna save it. I don't type anything. I just put a one here. If you guys want to name it, do your thing. But again, you know me, I'm trying to get it done and trying to be done with it as possible. Next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go here to select and I'm gonna do inverse. Now, instead of her selected, I now have the background selected. With that background selected, I'm gonna come in here and I'm gonna hit brightness and contrast. What I wanna do is depending on how I want that background behind her, if I want it darker, if I want it just to fade away a little bit, so just her is there, that's what I would actually do when it comes to it. Again, this picture was actually pretty good, so I'm not even gonna worry about it too much, but I did wanna show you guys what I did in reference to that to kind of get those backgrounds. If the background was a little bit too bright, this is what I did to darken it up without touching the exposure on her. Now, very important. Once you do this, say for instance, you know, you like this, like, okay, yeah, this is a pretty good, you know, mix of her. You have to now go over the outline of her with that white brush. With that white brush, all it does is it just removes that hard edge that you just created. And because I didn't do it as much, I don't think we're gonna really see a hard edge. But usually there is a hard edge here. Let's actually do it a little bit more. Let's see what we got. Let's do it in a second. We want to do it just a little more here. So that way you guys can kind of start to see that hard edge, see how hard that is right there and along the arms and how bumpy and stuff that looks. So with this white brush, what that actually does is it smooths all of that up by blending that whiteness, because all you're doing is painting on this mask here. So it's just blending that information up. So if I start to blend here, as you can see, oh, it smooths it up a little bit. Does make the white a little bit darker, which is fine, but you want that to smooth it up. So I just wanted to show you guys that. Make sure you go over the entire body of work when you do that information as well too. So keep that information in mind. I'm going to go ahead and remove that because I think this looks really good the way, um, again, get it done in camera first, and in camera this looks really good for me. I love the contrast of her in the background. I like her eyes. She's looking directly at you, and it's just telling a story for me. Last but not least, I go in here, guys, and I got a pre-made brush with Jeff Simon Photo on it, and I add a layer. I go in, I pick a place where it's not going to be too distracting, and plop it on, you know, here, boom, and take the occupancy down to about 60. Boom, there we go. And from there, I flatten. Now, this is the big part. How do you export your images for Instagram or for Facebook, and how do you export them to your clients? Well, export them to your clients is really what your clients are wanting. So, if they want an image that's 8 by 10, well, you go here to image size, and you can actually resize it original, and you can actually go in here and you can resize it to 8 by 10 or whatever you need to do. For Facebook or Instagram, though, what you want to do along the longest edge, meaning the bigger number between the width and the height, you want to go in and you want to do 2048. I do 2058 just so I can be a little bit bigger. That's just me. Okay, so now once you do that, you've made the image smaller. I go in here and I grab a copy, because now that I made it small, I want to make sure that it maintains all that sharpness. So I do another high pass, but I do it really, really small, like 0.3. And again, remember on high pass, we do an overlay to remove that gray. We merge the layers, and now we want to actually export. Export this, save for web, Instagram, Facebook is on the web. Now we can export this whatever we want to. I hit save. I'm gonna do edit 1A just so I can know what's the difference. Hit save. Exit here. And guys, that's what I do. Every single photo, that's what I do. It took a little longer because I was talking, but normally this is done. I can get through this 10 minutes per each photo. And it allows me just to get more work done. It allows me to concentrate more on what I like to do, which is shooting, and I get to go from there. So if you got any questions, make sure you always reach me at jeff@perfectexposurecourse.com. Again, I'm Jeff from Jeff Simon Photo. I'm in the light giving you that perfect exposure. You guys be safe. Peace.